name is Sabrina Zaidan. I'm from Kyiv, Ukraine. I have one passion. It's scaling. I help development teams build networks of websites using WordPress multi-site. But other thing that I'm doing to scale WordPress websites is making them loading faster by doing the stuff that I will show here today. So why would you care about performance at all? Fast loading website is equally important for small personal blogs and huge e-commerce store. If you just start posting something on your blog in hope that someone will be interested in this content, you want it to load fast enough so Google will rank your website high and give you some nice positions. Because if it's loading slow, if it loads slow, Google won't rank it high, and you will be never able to find out if your content is interesting to anyone except your friends and mom. If you run high traffic website, say popular e-commerce store, it means that your website is already loading faster enough that you have enough traffic, right? But you still need to care about performance, because for high visited websites, even small improvements in performance will make significant difference in numbers, in terms of enrollment, in terms of conversion and money. If you are interested in numbers, there is a website called WPO Stats that gathers performance studies, its impact on business metrics. So today we'll see a few steps that you can take to improve your website performance. And here they are. Learn how to measure it correctly. Then we'll see what basic checks you can make to improve it truly easily. Then we'll see how you can improve your media impact. We'll find out how to go further if previous steps didn't help. What to do next? So the very first step, and the most important one, is to learn how to measure it correctly. Because if you cannot measure your website loading times correctly, you cannot improve them. You've been in this situation, right? You're testing your website and it seems to you that it's loading fast enough. But then you use another browser, another laptop, or just clear your browser cache. And then you may find out that it's not loading fast at all, or even awfully slow. The first lesson that you may learn of testing website performance, that it's not about your perception and personal experience, and it should be tested. At some point you get to some variation of the question, what tool should I use? You've all heard about GTmetrix, Pingdom tools, page speed insights, right? So you're going there and trying to perform some tests. And sometimes you might get pretty decent results, like AAA scores and greens and 90% and stuff, pretty nice scores and pretty set numbers. So this happens because website performance is not about scores and greens. It's about real numbers in seconds and milliseconds. So the next thing you should keep in mind, it's not about scores. Also, if you try different tools, if you try to test your website performance by different tools, this is the results for the same website. If you try to run tests in different tools, you may have results that may vary a lot. Because each of these tools use different settings for running tests. And if you don't know the conditions under which tests were run, it makes no sense at all. You can't interpret them correctly and make any improvement if you don't know, if you don't know the conditions the tests were made. So it's not something about finding one perfect tool. If there will be just one takeaway from this talk, I would love to know that next time you're thinking about your website loading time optimization, loading time improvement, you will keep in mind that it's all about your user experience. It's all about your users. You should start and end at this idea. So when measuring your website loading times, your aim will be to measure the loading times that are as close to a real user's experience as possible. When improving loading times, the same. You should improve your real user's experience. So how to do that? First of all, we'll measure numbers, not scores, right? The second thing we should keep in mind to pick the right location when measuring your website load time. If you're working on improvement loading times for website of local restaurant here in Long Beach, the server location should be as close to California as possible, or at least in US. Because if you try to run tests through a web server that is located in UK, the results may vary a lot and they won't make you happy. The next thing you should keep in mind that different users in different areas have different type of connection. When running tests, you should consider the type of connection your users have. Do you know how to find out what type of connection your users use? Do you have any idea? That can be found out in Google Analytics tools. You can find out what type of connection your users use and then use this information to measure website loading time that reflects your real user experience. The next step will be run tests several times. If you do this, you may find out that results for the initial run and repeated views may vary a lot. So you would like to do this several times and get the average. Test different types of content. We tend to test just homepage loading time, but users of your website, they don't use homepage only. Actually, this is probably the less used type of content on your website. They use product pages, they open blog posts, regular pages, contact pages, but not homepage only. When I'm doing performance optimization thing, I usually will run homepage and 3 main pages of the website with different types of content. It will be like the most visited types of the pages or the pages that are the most expensive in terms of advertising. So always test different types of pages. What numbers I should keep in mind, right? What is good enough? So here are some numbers. These are recommendations that's what Google recommends us to keep in mind. Speed index 3 seconds, request count 50, and page weight less than half megabyte. So this is like official recommendation. Take a look at some other numbers, like real numbers. Speed index 6 seconds, request count 124, and page weight more than 3 megabytes. These are average for US for 2018. So instead of setting unrealistic goals and follow the recommendations by Google that you will never be able to chase, what will be the realistic goal here? To me, like the most productive way to set goals in terms of performance improvement will be to test like main competitors, 3 of them, for example, and get some average number and try to be at least 20% faster than they. So before going into really complicated steps, there is a bunch of things you can do, like check out for low-hanging fruit before going further. You can start with checking out these points. First of all, and it's the simplest one, check out your PHP version. You can check PHP version by using function or by using small plugin display PHP version. Funny how many websites are running outdated versions right now in 2019, almost 2020. So your PHP version should be 7.3, not just because it's the fastest PHP version, but also because it's the only PHP version that will be actively supported after the new year. The next point is check out that your server is using HTTP2 protocol. 3 main things that make HTTP2 better than previous HTTP1 protocol, like compressing headers, multiplexing, server push. To check out if your server uses HTTP2 protocol, you can use this website, http2.pro. Next thing, you would like to make sure that your server in general is fast enough, that time to first byte is less than 200 milliseconds. But this might be tricky. This time to first byte is influenced not only by server, but many other things, like how your theme is coded, what plugins you use, how loading is prioritized. The nice idea will be, before testing your homepage for time to first byte, to test some TXT file on your server, for example, robots.txt, because this is how you may find out the clear time to first byte before WordPress was loaded. It will give you a clear result showing the performance of your server itself without WordPress. Make sure that browser caching is enabled. There are some rules we set in htaccess, and in hope that browsers will obey and save some stuff for us and then serve it to user, but sometimes these rules are not applied. You would like to check if they are applied. The next thing you would like to check is if server-side page caching is enabled. What it does, it saves the static version of the page on your server, and when a visitor comes to your website, instead of executing PHP and MySQL all over again, if page hasn't changed, it will serve just the saved version of the page to a user. Also, the nice thing when this is combined with preloaded, because usually it works like this: someone will visit your website, your web server will, after this first initial visit, your web server will save the HTML version of this page, and the second person and all who follows will receive cached version. But if you have preloading enabled, it will imitate the real visitor visit before anyone comes to this page, and will serve the cached HTML version of the page even to the first initial visitor, which is nice, because even the first visitor will get these benefits of server-side caching. My favorite caching plugin is WP Rocket. I worked for this company for a while. I love it very much, and it has preloading feature in it. So you may try this out as well. The next check you would like to do is if gzip is enabled. To make a long story short, just look at these numbers, compressed versus uncompressed. Just by enabling gzip compression on your web server, you may save up to 70% of JavaScript and CSS file size. Check the basics. PHP version 7.3, service HTTP2, time to first byte less than 200 milliseconds, and you would like to test this for regular TXT document, not for the WordPress website. Browser caching is on, and gzip is enabled as well. So what's the next? If media on your website is not served correctly, it may have a huge impact on your loading times. In case it's done correctly and everything is all right, it won't have. The main recommendation is to serve scaled images. So this is a logo image. The largest size it's displayed on the desktops is just 43 pixels. When uploading a logo on the website, someone uploaded the file that they could find probably easily at that point, and it appeared to be 2000 pixels wide. So what happens in this case? This huge logo is, when someone requests the page, this huge logo is transferred from the server to the client's browser, and then in the client's browser it gets resized and compressed to the size of 43 pixels. This is how it can be improved. Just look at the numbers. It was like at 840 kilobytes, and after resizing to the actual size of 43 pixels, the actual size of the logo on the website, all of a sudden something about 4 kilobytes. The next thing you would like to do is losslessly compress images. There are some tools that will do this on the flow, like Imagify, and there are some tools that can do this beforehand. I personally use Mass Image Compressor, it's a desktop application to mass compress a lot of images and just upload them to the website. The next thing you would like to do is do the same thing to the videos. There is a tool called FFmpeg. That's what I could get of it, like compressing without losing in quality, just compressing the video from almost 7 megabytes to 600 kilobytes. It's fantastic, isn't it? How do you think Facebook and Twitter and all big websites, they have all these GIFs loading instantly? Because they are not GIFs at all, they are MP4, they are videos. They use HTML5 to serve these GIFs on the websites. If you try to download GIF from Twitter or Facebook, you will find out it's MP4. That's what you should do as well. Just turn GIFs into MP4 and serve it with a HTML5 video on your website. The next thing you would like to do is to use lazy load for images and videos. Lazy load is the techniques aims to load the content only that will be in the first viewport, only the content that is needed right now. So instead of waiting while everything, every single picture, every single video on your website will be loaded and then showing the content to the user, it will load only that part of content that will be in the viewport next. So it helps you reduce time to first byte as well, and like this, the main important numbers, speed index, time to first interactive, actually time to the point when user can actually do something with your website, interact with it. So media improvements will be serving scaled images, will be losslessly compressing images and videos, also will turn GIFs into MP4, will lazy load both images and videos. Sometimes you will do basic checks, you will take care about all the media on your website, but if your website, if your page size something about 30 megabytes and there is something about 1,000 requests on your website and it's web Frankenstein or something, just expect no magic of it. You'll have to go further. So the next step will be to find the leaks. It's pretty easy to do if you learn how to read waterfall. I recommend, and I'm totally in love with, is webpagetest.org. To my mind, it's kind of the most full report you can get on your website performance. It may be confusing for new users. The nice points to start to learn about performance, if you would like to, will be Twitters of these three awesome people. There is a book on how to read waterfalls, how to read results, how to use them to improve your website performance if you're interested in. If you're not, you can hire someone. When hiring someone, just keep in mind to follow the step 1, because if you cannot measure your website loading times properly, no matter whom you hire, it won't make any sense, because you won't see any improvements or not improvements. You want to be able to understand what kind of work is done. The step 5 will be to keep an eye on it. Once everything is done, you still want to maintain your media, because you're updating content on your website, so you want to keep it going. You want to take care of your database, make sure it's not overloaded with revisions and old drafts and stuff. You want to keep your WordPress websites, plugins and theme updated. After some changes, for example, you installed new plugins, you've made some significant changes in your theme, you would like to test your website again and again to see what is the difference between what it was and what it became. Also, you would like to monitor loading times, not from time to time, but on a regular basis. That was my idea when I was building my plugin for monitor. It uses WebPageTest API and what it does, monitoring website loading times each day, and in case it's not good, it will email me that your website is slower than you want it to be. That's it. Thank you very much for coming. I hope it was useful. Thank you.